I remember when you said this to me, accelerating consciousness, and it just got me. What do you mean when you say accelerate your consciousness?
Not all forms of acceleration are good. Mostly acceleration is a way of disconnecting and going at a pace that's not sustainable and effectively racing to the brink. Climate change, all kinds of things in our culture are not necessarily going to produce the kind of progress that we want. And civilizations do collapse. There have been many civilizations. The Easter Islanders, were they accelerating consciousness as they chopped the last tree down?
Wait, tell that story, Steve, because I literally have in my notes as like, I forgot it was Easter Island, but that's a favorite little parable, real life parable, something like that. Can you just, talk it through again?
Yes, it's in Jared Diamond's book Collapse, which chronicles civilizations that have collapsed. There was a tragedy of the commons. They were on a small island with limited resources, and there was no central governing body to protect the trees. So they basically just decimated the island of its natural resources. No further expansion was possible. They were done. The whole civilization collapsed. That is my understanding. I'm sure that's oversimplified. We know that's possible. 99% of species have gone extinct in the history of planet Earth. So extinction is not uncommon in natural terms.
I always have this, almost, this kind of optimistic look into the future, right? I'm always excited for what is to come. I always think that we're, up and up and up and up. And, there's always been this, I want to say tension, but this is what I love about talking to you is this kind of, hey, Josh, I'm excited about the new iPhone too, but things don't always work out like you hope they will. We have to be careful. We're building things that I like your quote, technological giants, but moral midgets. Who said that? I know you use all the time, so hopefully you can remember who said that.
Yeah, Carl Jung said that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard of that guy. And so I think why I was so taken by that idea of accelerating consciousness is because I think I realized that that's actually kind of what I'm trying to do right here with my project is I do think that technology progresses and it progresses at an increasingly accelerating rate and it has a lot of promise. And in general, my question is always, how do we keep up? Well, what's the meta skill to make sure that we are on that ramp of progress and honestly can take advantage of it? And at first I heard your kind of cautionary tale as being, hey, like, well, come on, Steve, like it's all going to be great. But when you brought in this concept, for me, those terms accelerating consciousness, what really hit home for me was that is the way to handle technology, that we need to, keep up with it. And, I don't want to put words in your mouth because I know we're going to, see it differently. But for me, it got me really excited because I had more thought about, this like cautionary tale around technology is to govern technology rather than say, how can we keep up or how can we be technological giants and moral giants?
I agree with you that we are called upon more than ever to evolve our consciousness right now. And that if we don't, we will not be able to handle the godlike powers that we clearly have and we clearly are developing. And so is it possible? Fermi's paradox, the great filter, why don't we see other signs of intelligent life? Perhaps there are things that are hard to progress beyond, to create a form of governance where you cooperate and you can progress outwardly rather than getting locked in conflict. I do think acceleration of consciousness is possible. I think there's nonlinear acceleration, but what really matters is the direction and where the information is coming from. In my own life, when I was part of, investment banking and private equity and, basically accelerating, working hard and playing hard and, trying to rock climb as hard as I could and accelerating, up the grades. Accelerating didn't necessarily mean just doing all those things I was doing harder and faster. Accelerating actually first involved a kind of deepening to the broader system, a perspective kind of beyond my egoic, framework at the time, and tuning into my intuition, figuring out what I was really after, what really mattered to me, and then reforming around that. And then as I started to do that, all kinds of tailwinds kicked in because I was systemically operating from the right place. I was providing more value to the people around me. It just made more sense in many different ways than, the previous projects were vanity projects or they weren't my deepest calling. And so, yeah, I think accelerating means firstly figuring out where you're going. We actually need to go quiet. We actually need to get this information from our system. It's not something we can linearly map out and consciously develop. There is an updating that happens from the broader nervous system that we can tune into and receive, but we can't necessarily map. And that's why it's nonlinear. And that's why you can have one conversation can change your life. There's always the question, how long does therapy take? And for some clients, they've been doing a lot to potentiate something and the fruit is really ripe and it's there to be picked almost immediately. And so there's a tipping point that can happen with consciousness where something's been working underground that can now come to the surface. And then in other cases, that fruit is not ripe to be picked and the tree needs to be grown first, or the soil needs to be fertilized. So I think the nonlinearity is important, but if you do the right work and you're tuning in to the systemic information that comes to you via your broader nervous system, you start to get onto that curve that does have a nonlinear component to it. And what you are bringing forward starts to resonate with other people because your body is picking up what everyone's body is picking up. And so something nonlinear starts to happen. And I think that's how kind of movements start. And that, things that really change the world happen in this kind of way.
So with that in mind, what was the thing that accelerated your consciousness the most that you can remember?
Yeah, I think there were periods of my life where I went in deep reflection and read enormous quantities of things. Alan Watts, Carl Jung, people who are trying to basically figure out what is the right way to be. How do you orient to the world? I think there's stages of developments. There's Erikson's model of psychosocial growth. There's Freud's libidinal model, the oral, anal, phallic, latent, genital stages. Consciousness needs stages so that the next level can reflect back on the previous level of development. That is kind of how we develop up. And so it's easy to disregard early stages as not important, but often they set the stage for the next piece of development. So I would say traveling for 5 years and reading a lot probably did accelerate my growth, even though I would say I was still pretty lost and confused when I returned. I knew I needed to figure things out, and I had a strong motivation to find my purpose. And then it was in that context that I had some psychedelic experiences that reconnected me to parts of myself that I had lost touch with. And there was a remembering process that happened where I came to more fullness, more aliveness. But I don't think that alone would have been enough. Starting working with a figure who's become a kind of mentor to me and who I've worked with now for about 5 years, the regular container of showing up and explaining myself, having him point out aspects I was missing, being challenged, being in relationship with this mentor figure. I would say that of everything, that's probably the thing that started to actually change the way I was behaving in the world. But also in that process was when I figured out I wanted to be a therapist. Starting to work with clients, I see 30 to 35 clients a week, and I'm in more contact. I probably speak to tenfold more people than I used to speak to in the typical week or month. I was very disconnected before, and now I'm very connected. And I think that has been very transformational. I think people used to be dangerous to me. And then as I've done my own inner work and then been around a lot of people, people are feeling safer to me. That hyperconnectivity, I would say that is a kind of acceleration in my consciousness. there's a lot of updating that's happening in that. There's a lot of feedback. So I think that helps to accelerate things.